I agree with you. Look, I know that there's good evidence of multiple shooters, and we covered that on our show. You do have the issue of fog of war. People in a crazy situation. There's going to be lots of reports of different things that are going to turn out to later be inaccurate or misperceived. You do have, as we talked about, not a great investigation at all by the Vegas police. But I would jump to, okay, let's assume there were multiple shooters. You got to then package that into some theory here as to what really happened, because otherwise you've just got some tidbits of information that seem to conflict with each other and so on. But have you, and I watched the first half hour of your documentary. Unfortunately, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I will. But do you get to that in the documentary? I mean, ultimately, what is your conclusion about what really happened?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is, yes, there's a fog of war thing, but most of the 911 calls, and there are hundreds, collaborate each other. You'll hear a call about hearing gunshots, and then someone calls 1 minute later seeing a gunman, and then someone calls about running from a gunman. They were all corroborating each other. So I think that's important to detail. They're not all random. Some are crazy, but, so that's one thing. And then toward the end, I knew people were going to ask me. I want people to come to their own conclusions, but I know I'm going to get asked because I spent so much time on it. What do I think happened? And while I can't prove exactly what they were going for, I can prove that the FBI covered it up pretty poorly, in fact, which is why, when have you ever seen a tragedy drop from the news after 2 weeks? They milk that stuff, especially if there's a chance that they can get gun rights. And I think that was one of the focuses. There was something going on with the Saudis. I don't know. I would need my FOIA request. I would need more information to come to that conclusion. All I can prove is that the FBI covered it up, and they were going for all our gun rights. They kept bringing up bump stocks, but which, if you're a Second Amendment supporter, you're like, I don't own them. I wouldn't even use them. Why are they so obsessed with this? And I think they wanted to make a point that all semi-automatic weapons, look at what they can do. They can turn into automatic. So we have to get rid of the semi-automatics too, which they have thrown around before, especially around that time. But he'll win. They weren't going to give up their rights. They weren't going to do what Australia did and go, oh God, oh no, please take away my rights and protect me. Government didn't happen. It wasn't going to happen. And I think they lost there. And because there were so many holes in this, they were forced to drop it from the news cycle before people figured out how badly they were lying about everything. The 3 women registered, there were 3 women, as Laura Loomer points out, registered to Paddock's room. No interviews. You got the Australian guy who now highlighted again. That knew stuff before it was released. How to do that? So the only way we're going to get answers is if the people get mad and demand them. And that is one thing Joey Gilbert, who's running against Lombardo, he promised to reopen the case. And I'm like, you have no idea what that means to Las Vegas. This is the most surveilled city in the world. And yet we don't have any real footage. We just have people's cell phones and body cam footage we had to sue for, even though we're supposed to just ask. But it took a year, all the way to the federal Supreme Court here to get that footage. And now we know why. Why were cops told to put off their cameras? Why are they eating on a set? Why are hard drives walking off? Why aren't people getting interviewed that were registered to the room? Why didn't anyone even bring about all this other evidence and gun casings and witnesses and shooting caught, there's 9 different cop body comms, comms. Some of it was cameras, some of it was just them hearing it over the radio of automatic gunfire at Bellagio at midnight. How do you explain that? We could solve this if they would allow us to, but they're hiding it. And that tells me, man, they messed up. Whatever they were doing did not go the way they want. And they're covering it up, or this was the plan all along, to do a false flag, which is nothing new to this government. Mm-hmm. Definitely nothing new to the FBI.
And what would walk me through the false flag theory?
What?
Walk me through the false flag theory. In other words, who would have been behind it, and what would have been their motivation?
What's weird is, as being someone that's looked at everything I could get my hands on, there seems to be an ISIS element, there seems to be an Antifa element, and there seems to be an FBI element. Who else can hide 4 helicopters? If the government wanted to solve who was flying those and what was going on, because if for people who don't know, 3 helicopters turned off their transponders before the shooting, right before the shooting. They don't go on until the minute the shooting ends. And no one can tell us what the hell they were doing. They're clearly flying around. They're on all kinds of videos. People saw them. People thought they were getting shot at from them. because it just sounded so crazy that day. I would just like to see those interviews of those pilots and what they were doing. Why does it look like they were landing on roofs and stuff? What were they doing? How did they know to put their transponders off before the terrorist attack? That sounds like they had some kind of info. What about the Hispanic woman that told everybody they were going to die 45 minutes in front of the stage, how to get carried off by security? How about the guy that many people saw lighting firecrackers and poppers, which, could have a false sense of security? Oh, don't worry, they're firecrackers when they're getting shot at, or gauging the wind for snipers. You had headshots. I had to look at every autopsy, 19 autopsies, straight parallel wounds. I get a ricochet off here and there, but how do people get shot straight on, looking at the stage, not people running or hiding? I only counted the people at the stage. There's a whole grouping of them. Things don't make sense. I want answers. And until people get angry at Lombardo, at the LVPD, and at the FBI, who's already been caught doing how many other false flags between the Whitmer kidnapping, January 6th, why do they have their finger in all this stuff? I get it. It's a great way to take away people's rights and increase government power, but I really don't want to be shot at by my own government.
Fair enough. What do you make of Paddock? Because, we interviewed we're the first to interview his brother. So we did a lot of investigating on Paddock, his upbringing, his background, his mental health, his financial situation, his girlfriend situation. And, a lot of that does seem to point to a murder-suicide. Murder-suicide is a very common way of people going out. They kill their wife and children and then kill themselves, or they kill their girlfriend and then they kill themselves. And, this guy killed, I forget the number now, it was 59, 58 people, and then killed himself. My looking at that was, he was down on his luck, clearly in depression. He did have psychological issues. He had been prescribed, I forget the medication that he had been prescribed before, but he seemed to be a bit autistic. Definitely had some bizarre behaviors with the video poker, but he lost his girlfriend. He was losing money at the casino, and he's spiraling down, and he's going to go out in one big burst of glory and be the greatest mass shooter in American history, and then kill himself.
Yeah, that's not what I see when I look at everything. First off, if Paddock's goal was to be insane and murder as many people as he wanted at once, and he's a millionaire, why wouldn't he buy use a belt-fed weapon? Why would you trust a bump stock? They're awful. Why would he stop shooting for no reason, and the cops don't even get to the door for an hour later? If you're going to go out, you go out. Why did he pay his taxes on his winnings? What I think happened was, I think he was a spook. I think he was working for the feds. His last real job on paper was Lockheed Martin. He barely has an online presence. I mean, they had that one picture with his eyes closed, which was the main picture, even though they had his license sitting there. It's like they didn't want people to recognize him. He had a pilot's license. And my thing was, I think he was working for the feds. I think he was setting up this deal to hopefully stop terrorists. Hopefully he was at least doing that. ISIS thought he was one of them. They said on their official channels, oh no, he's one of us. But I'm like, if he had to sell guns to the Saudis or something like that, that's the story he would tell them, and I don't know if he shot anyone. It doesn't make any sense. I think he was dead before anything happened, or died halfway through or something. There's no way he's shooting in one room, locked the door from the inside, magically transports to the other room, and he's dead on the floor. That's not possible in a one-person scenario. There's so much. And I pray you watch the rest of the documentary, because you're going to get mad at a lot of parts, but I was.
Yeah.
It just doesn't add up that he would do it like this. It makes more sense it was a bad terrorist plot that the government either screwed up or let happen to gain something from it. Kind of like the Boston bombing. If anyone's familiar with that, that's a mess. That's a real hot mess.
Well, we do know ISIS claimed responsibility for it. And in fact, did it twice. And we covered that quite a bit. The fact that if ISIS wasn't a part of it, it would have been the first time that ISIS had claimed responsibility for something and it not having been true.
That doesn't often happen. And oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just kind of delayed. I'll try to talk slower.
Okay.
I feel like he just that was his cover, that he'd converted and he was a terrorist, and that's how this whole thing was going to work. That makes more sense. He doesn't scream Islamic terrorist to me when you watch his actions. I think the whole gambling was just money laundering for illegal gun sales, which seems to be the only thing other than real estate that he was doing. And, you know, I have friends that are in the gun industry and they'll tell you stories. You will get approached by, oh yeah, just sell me this weapon under your name and we'll make it disappear. And they're like, no. You know, you're either a terrorist or you're a government trying to get at me. That happens.